Hey everybody, I want to tell you a quick Zimbardo story, but first let me tell you how I've gotten to know him. And when I talk about Zimbardo and that I know him, I'm always a little self-conscious because I worry that people think I'm bragging or name dropping. And one reason why I like to tell students about this is to just to sort of inspire you, especially if you're an introvert like me, to network. That's the moral of all of this. Rick Sword, who I met through Zimbardo, um, used to always say, that cliche. It's not what you know that matters; it's who you know. That's only partly true. Rick always added that it's who knows you that matters. All right. So it doesn't matter that I know Zimbardo. It's important that he knows me. That's what's been of benefit to me in my relation with him is that he knows me. So let me just quick tell you how I got to know him and why I know Zimbardo in the first place. So it all began back in 2005. His book rep for his textbook contacted me when I was a professor at Hawaii Pacific University there and asked if I would like to get together with him over for dinner. He was inviting area psychology faculty to this pizza joint that a relative of his owned, and his niece and nephew owned this place. I was like, sure, yeah, I'd go. So I went with my good colleague and friend, Howard Markowitz, and we wound up sitting right across the table from him and got this picture on his camera. And Zimbardo emailed me the photo that night, and I now have his email and a great photo with him. And so a few years later, I heard he was coming back out, and I contacted him, and it turned out he didn't have a ride from the airport, so I picked him up and took him to his hotel, and he came and gave an informal talk to our faculty and students there, and I had dinner with him that evening and went to him give talks. The rest of the time he was there. And each time he came out, we'd do something similar. Get together, and I'd take students, and he was always really gracious. And my students, when he was out in the Hawaii Psychological Association in 2012, I had a table full of students. He was the featured speaker for the lunch, and he took me by surprise by when he got introduced. He talked about how great it was to be back in Hawaii and see good friends like Brian Metcalf. I kind of almost spit out my food, and my students were looking at me like, ugh. So anyway, that's a little bit how I've gotten to know him. And again, he's always really gracious with students and signing autographs and posing with pictures with them and expressing interest in them. And, he contacted me somewhere in between and asked me to collaborate with him, which has been sort of the academic, professional thrill of my life. This culminated in an article that I wrote with him that appeared in an encyclopedia on time perspective theory, and then I co-presented with him at the Western Psychological Association a few years ago, talking about how I use his Heroic Imagination project within my courses, particularly my Intro to Psych class. Now, 2016, that same year I was out in Long Beach prior to that conference at an all-day workshop with the Heroic Imagination project. And we did this group photo at the end of it. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was standing right next to this woman, Dr. Marlo Davis, who we didn't know each other at the time, but 1 year later we were both hired here at University of Cincinnati, and we're good friends and colleagues now. So small world. 1 year earlier, there we were right next to each other in the group photo and didn't even know didn't know each other. Okay, so finally get to my story here. So in 2013, he was out in Hawaii, one of the many times he's been out there, and at the American Psychological Association. And we spent much of the days there together and going from talk to talk. And we were sitting here. He bought me lunch, bought a couple of hot dogs, and sat down to enjoy them. And some random person came up, which is just want to happen when you're with him at a conference. He's nonstop barraged by people who want to fans who want to talk to him, get a picture, get an autograph. So this happened just before we, just as we sat down. So a moment later, we dive into our hot dogs, and I'm eating my hot dog and listening to whatever fascinating things he's talking about. And I get down to my last bite, and I pop it into my mouth. Well, it turns out that should have been 2 bites. It was a little bit too large for one. And guess what? It gets stuck in my throat. All right. So I'm sitting there listening to him, and I've got now a big chunk of hot dog lodged in my esophagus. But I'm, hey, be cool. And so I'm just trying to hide it. And I'm sitting there with my napkin trying to get it up or get it down, and it won't go either way. And he's talking away, and he eventually notices that I'm starting to turn blue, and he asks finally, "Are you okay? Are you choking?" And I have to nod that yes, I am. And so he gets behind me, and he's pounding on my back, and he managed to help me work the hot dog out. And so yeah, so he talks about heroics, but he doesn't just talk the talk; he walks the walk. And I don't know if he's saved other lives, but he has saved mine. So for that reason and many, many more, Zimbardo will always be my homeboy. So I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you, and see you next time. Bye now.